This is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the Legislature Today is provided by West Virginia University, offering education, healthcare, and the opportunity to achieve career success since 1867. Information at wvu.edu. Embassy Suites by Hilton Charleston, an all-suite hotel and conference center minutes from Yeager Airport and Capital Markets. Reservations and brasserie dining information available at hilton.com.
Solar Holler, supporting Appalachian communities and building on West Virginia's history of powering the nation by bringing solar energy and battery backup to homeowners, nonprofits, and businesses throughout the region. More at solarholler.com.
Welcome to the Legislature Today. I'm Curtis Tate. The Democratic Caucus of the West Virginia House of Delegates hosted a press briefing Monday to highlight their current legislative priorities. Jack Walker stopped by and brought us this report.
House Democrats say the chamber's Republican majority is prioritizing bills about flashy social issues over policies that would affect the lives of everyday West Virginians. Delegate Sean Fluharty, a Democrat from Ohio County, pointed to bills proposed by Republican lawmakers that would rename West Virginia's Spruce Knob to Trump Mountain and expand vaccine exemptions for the state's youth.
You've heard about Trump Mountain. You've heard about the vaccine mills and the lack of Governor Morrissey's plan with his signature legislation, which does nothing going forward. After a supermajority for a decade, they control everything. Every single seat. They could pass whatever they wanted in the blink of an eye. And what do we have to show for it?
At a press conference Monday, House Democrats displayed a sign depicting two lists, one labeled WV GOP Waste and the other labeled For the People. That second list juxtaposed what Democrats described as faulty Republican bills with their own legislative priorities. Those include affordable childcare, flood resiliency, lower utility costs, and healthcare access. Delegate John Williams, a Democrat from Monongalia County, says things like tax cuts supported by Republican lawmakers don't directly affect those areas of need. He said cuts to spending on the federal and state levels only make them worse.
These tax bills for the average West Virginia family maybe put $80 to $100 back in their pocket. Take that $80 to $100, go to Texas Roadhouse, take your family there. While you're there, say hi to the waitress. She used to be your son's math teacher, but she had to quit because her benefits stick so bad now because the state of West Virginia can't cover it.
Delegate Evan Hansen, a Democrat from Monongalia County, said Democrats have put forth several bills they think could address widespread issues.
I have a number of bills addressing things like clean drinking water, which is a crisis in our southern coal fields and elsewhere across the state, and bills that'll lower our electric rates. Would include a temporary freeze on electric rates.
Republican lawmakers in this year's legislature outnumbered Democrats 91-9 in the House and 32-2 in the Senate. Fluharty said the Democrats would be open to speaking to Republican House leadership about solutions to some of the concerns they highlighted. For the Legislature Today, I'm Jack Walker at the state capitol.
The House Judiciary Committee met this morning to discuss a bill that restricts the rights of transgender West Virginians. Brianna Heaney has that story.
I'm standing here outside the House Judiciary Committee, where they're about to hear about a bill called the Riley-Gaines Act. That bill defines gender. It also limits trans people's access to places like bathrooms or locker rooms that align with their gender. It also limits trans women's access to places like a domestic abuse shelter.
My name is Curtis Hayhart. I am Governor Morrissey's Director of Policy. I appreciate the opportunity to present the governor's version of the Riley-Gaines Act, designated HB 2006.
Delegate Sean Fluharty, a Democrat from Ohio County, asked how the bill would be enforced.
Questions on this? Thank you.
All right, let's talk about how this bill will operate then in these areas. Are we going to have a confirmation system to assure who's going into these facilities as to their biological gender?
The bill doesn't contemplate that.
Capehart says the bill leaves a lot of enforcement decisions to local governments.
Okay, so we're not going to have attendance in front. I was trying to see if we could turn this into a jobs bill. Like, are they going to have attendance at these facilities?
The bill has no penalties for anyone who violates the proposed statute. Opponents of the bill say the bill doesn't need or have penalties because the things they are trying to protect women from, like assault, are already outlawed in code. Andrew Schneider is the director of Fairness West Virginia, a LGBTQ rights advocacy group. He says this bill doesn't do anything to keep the public safe.
First of all, we all care about public safety, particularly in places like public restrooms. But the fact of the matter, there are already laws that punish people for, harming people in a restroom. And so this bill is completely unnecessary. And what it does is it continues to demonize trans people. And that actually creates a harm.
Fluharty says that this bill is an example of the GOP's legislative priorities so far.
We already have criminal penalties in place. It doesn't add any more. It's just another political bill, and it's a signature piece of legislation from Governor Morrissey, which is quite frankly embarrassing. When we have a $400 million deficit, it creates 0 jobs, it does nothing to help West Virginia families. You know who it helps? Politicians running for re-election. That's really what this is all about.
The bill also bans trans people from what's called private single-sex spaces. One of those spaces named in the bill are domestic violence shelters. According to the National Library of Medicine, trans women are nearly twice as likely to experience domestic violence than cisgender women. Julie Britton, the executive director of the YWCA, which operates a homeless shelter in Charleston, said if this bill becomes law, it could be deadly for transgender people.
What would the alternative be for that person? Are there any alternative facilities for people who could be excluded from care?
There are no alternative facilities, and if we are not available, the only other option would be a homeless shelter or the streets. And I don't know if we're worried about women's safety, putting trans women out on the street and not serving them is a death sentence.
A bill to limit access to transgender care for minors elicited one of the most well-attended public hearings of the 2024 session. Changes to House rules this session did away with public hearings. In exchange, the public should receive 24 hours notice to come to a bill's first committee and weigh in. That didn't happen with this bill. The committee agenda for the 9 a.m. Monday committee was posted Sunday evening. Andrew Schneider from Fairness says without the kind of proper notice that House leadership repeatedly said they would give, the legislative process is inaccessible to most people.
What the legislature is doing by providing less notice is they're depriving the public of hearing from all sides of the issue to making the most informed, deliberative decision on these bills that affect a lot of people.
The sponsors of the bill, Delegate Roger Hanshaw, a Republican from Clay County, and Delegate Kathy Kraus, a Republican from Putnam County, was not at the committee meeting. Also, no Republicans spoke in favor or against the bill during the committee meeting. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Brianna Heaney in Charleston.
A bill under review in the House of Delegates would make West Virginians who fail a drug test ineligible to receive unemployment benefits. Jack Walker has the details.
Under current state law, West Virginia residents can temporarily be refused unemployment benefits if they are fired for reporting to work while intoxicated, refuse to submit to a random drug test, or manipulate a drug test to obtain a false result. But House Bill 2441 would change unemployment benefit laws by adding just 3 words, blocking residents from unemployment benefits for refusing to submit to or failure of a drug test. The bill was proposed by Delegate George Street, a Republican from Preston County. During a meeting of the House Court Subcommittee on Monday morning, Street said he views the bill as a, quote, cleanup of phrasing already present.
And it mentions where if you refuse refusal to submit to a drug test. All I'm doing is adding in the word "or failure of," which to me would be implied already.
Street says it would still fall upon employers to enforce drug testing.
Maybe wouldn't apply to every single employee. This would be if their employer defines their position as a safety-sensitive position. Obviously, you don't want someone illegally intoxicated while they're running certain dangerous machinery, that sort of thing.
But Delegate Sean Fluharty, a Democrat from Ohio County, said the amendment to state code could create the possibility of punitive drug testing. He said he worries implementing the bill could violate federal laws surrounding firing and unemployment benefits.
Said states can only constrict these benefits if the discharge in place was directly related to intoxication or drug use. In other words, the originality, where it stems from, has to be directly related. You can't just umbrella it and say, you got in a fight at work and then you failed a drug test later, we're not going to give you unemployment benefits. So I believe this could be a foul of federal law.
Street said no legal counselors have reviewed the legality of the law since its proposal, but that he would modify the bill if needed.
I'm not an attorney, and if that's the case, then we would have to make adjustments. I agree.
Despite the pushback, the bill was advanced to the markup and discussion phase. After that, it could be referred to a committee or the House floor for further consideration. For the Legislature Today, I'm Jack Walker at the state capitol.
It's been over a year since legislators said making childcare more accessible was their top priority, but so far this session, nothing has been done. Still, some legislators, parents, and childcare providers say the state needs to do something to bolster this industry. Brianna Heaney has more.
West Virginia has a shortage of childcare facilities. Parents and guardians need more slots for childcare than exist in this state. There is also a shortage of subsidies for families who need them. Meanwhile, childcare providers are struggling to keep their doors open.
I'm here at a place to grow, one of only 2 daycare centers in all of Fayette County.
Caitlin Vandal, a mother of 2 and the manager, says she's in childcare because it's her passion to provide quality care to children. She says the margins of this business have always been thin.
We're not trying to make a fortune, we're just trying to make the girl.
But recently, that has been getting harder. Melissa Caligrasso, owner of the center, says they used to have programs for part-time childcare spots.
Because in this community, there's a lot of part-time work, or there's people who, I can only afford part-time, but we're juggling, mom and dad are juggling their schedules. So, I'll work evenings, you work days. We got a little gap in between. How about a part-time childcare program? We could afford that.
But those programs could be hard to break even on. After 30 years of offering part-time childcare, they had to stop, which meant that families' only choice with the daycare center was to pay for full-time childcare or none at all.
We had probably at least 10 families that just said, we can't do it. I'll quit my job, because it didn't make sense with the increase to jump in what they were making. If your whole paycheck goes to childcare, it's real easy to say, forget it, I'll just stay home. I won't work.
And this is part of the reason the free market hasn't fixed the childcare market. Childcare providers are limited on how much they can charge before demand drops off. If the price is close to or exceeds someone's wage, they are likely to pull children out of care and stay home. And running a child care center is expensive. Aside from spending on food, diapers, and rent, the centers spend a lot of money on labor. For every 4 infants, the child care center needs to have at least 1 trained provider to take care of them. For 2-year-olds, it's 8 to 1, and it goes on from there. And labor is its own issue. Childcare workers are some of the lowest earners compared with any other sector in the economy. Vandal says they work hard for relatively low pay.
Let's think about that for a minute. For a regular person to say, I'm going to give you 8 2-year-olds, by the way, I'm going to pay you $10 an hour. Yeah, let me go get 8 of them. Put them right here, and let's see how that's.
So Vandal says it's hard to keep quality workers. And because of how tight money is coming in and the fact that she can't charge more, there's not really any extra money to give raises. And while the industry survives on razor-thin margins, it also has a thick wait list.
I actually just called someone for an enrollment tour that has a baby that has been on our wait list since March of last year. They have an enrollment tour with me tomorrow. And I actually prefaced with her and said, hey, if you can't come tomorrow, I need you to let me know because I have somebody else on that spot to fill. So I need you to be able to come tomorrow. And she nearly was in tears and was like, thank you so much. I will be there. Priority will be there. So that's where our wait list is.
Vandal says a lot of the time she has the capacity, but not the workers. So she can't take in as many kids, and more families sit on the wait list longer. Sean O'Leary is an economist at the West Virginia Center on Budget and Policy. He says inaccessible childcare hurts the state's workforce participation.
We have the lowest labor force participation rate in the country, and a lot of that is due to particularly women who are staying at home taking care of family. And a lot of that is because childcare is unavailable or unaffordable. So making childcare more available, more affordable, and increasing the available slots, increasing the wages for the childcare workers would all work together to make the state a more attractive place to work, a more attractive place to live, and a more attractive place to place your business because the workforce will be that much stronger.
And because of all this, going into last year's legislative session, most lawmakers on both sides of the aisle agreed that childcare needed to be on top of the legislative agenda. By the end of that session, not a single law had been passed that addressed the shortage. Fast forward to now, there was one bill passed during an October special session that gave parents who pay for childcare a small tax break. For the 2025 regular session, some lawmakers say they want to get bigger legislation across the finish line, like Senator Mike Oliverio, a Republican from Monongalia County.
And so if we can provide quality childcare and we can do it in a way that working people can afford it, I think we can drive up our workforce participation, which in turn will drive up a lot of the other factors that help us as a state, even in terms of generating payroll taxes and personal income taxes and all those things that give us the dollars to provide the services to the citizens.
Oliverio spent some of the time between last year's regular session and now attending childcare conferences around the country. He says he learned a lot and wants to try and replicate what he says some states are doing right.
New Mexico takes the poverty level and multiplies that number by 4 and says, hey, if you make less than that number, you qualify for some subsidies. So I think that's one thing we could look at. I believe that would be a wise use of tax dollars to help support working families adequately provide for their children. Another thing that we can do is we can try to integrate programs with employers, the state, and the individual worker. And in those cases, the state maybe puts some money up, the employer puts some money up, and the worker pays what they can afford to pay based on a reasonable measure of all their other costs, housing, food, everything.
All of this, of course, will cost money. Meanwhile, the state's budget has gotten tighter in recent years, in part due to tax cuts. So, to pay for those programs, the state would likely have to cut the budget in other places or raise taxes.
And so I think if we'll look at a few of those things, we might need to expend some additional state resources, but I think we'll put a lot of people to work, and more importantly, we'll put a lot of young people into quality child care programs where they receive the proper brain development and preparation for school so that they can be successful in life.
Senator Mike Stewart, a Republican from Kanawha County and the incoming chair of the Judiciary Committee, says he wants to see the state take a bigger approach to growing child care in the state.
And if we continue down the approach of a little piece here, a little piece there, I don't think we'll ever get to where we need to be either.
He says he would be in favor of passing bigger tax cuts to working families this session.
So I love the idea of tax incentives, well placed. In fact, that tax credit for working families, I would have provided a much larger one. I'd love to encourage bigger families And I think the way we do that is to provide incentives to go to work.
And even to keep the state's child care system at its current status quo, it will take millions more in additional funding due to expiring COVID-era federal funds. To make large-scale changes to the child care system, it could take hundreds or millions of dollars more. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Brianna Heaney in Charleston.
Earlier today, Eric Douglas spoke with Delegate J.B. Akers, a Republican, and Delegate Mike Pushkin, a Democrat, about the vaccine exemption bill that passed the Senate and is now before the House Health and Human Resources Committee. But because of a technical glitch, the interview did not record. Our apologies to both delegates, and we hope to have them back on to discuss the topic. Eric joins me now to discuss the bill and what he learned in their discussion. Hey, Eric.
Thanks for having me up here, Curtis. Yeah, we're really kind of sorry about what happened, and our apologies to both gentlemen. But
well, these things do happen, of course. Tell me more about the bill.
So this is a Senate bill. The idea is that it loosens up the restrictions that people can either declare they have a religious reason for not wanting to vaccinate their children, or a philosophical reason. The concern, though, with that philosophical discussion is that it will only be, somebody could just sign a piece of paper and say, I don't want to vaccinate my children, and there's nothing further to it. The schools can't do anything about it, and they just have to accept the children.
So right now, children are required to be exempted,
right.
Vaccinated actually to be enrolled in school.
Correct, exactly. It's interesting. West Virginia has one of the lowest vaccination rates from children 0 to 5. But when they start attending school, we have one of the best vaccination rates because of this law. West Virginia has been a long-time leader in this, as a matter of fact. And that was one of the concerns that both the delegates expressed, actually, that we've led in this category. So neither one of them, both the Republican and the Democrat, neither one of them was thrilled about the bill, and they questioned why it was even coming up.
But what kind of support does it have?
You know, there is a certain modicum of support. The bill passed the Senate already, and the vote there was 20 to 12. So out of 32 senators present, obviously it was a majority, but it wasn't a landslide, even in a Republican-controlled Senate that has 32 Republicans. So a dozen Republicans voted against it. But there is a certain level of support, and to be honest with you, the same bill or a very similar bill passed through the entire legislature last year, was actually vetoed pretty much at the last minute by Senator Justice, but then Governor Justice after medical professionals spoke out against it.
But now the current governor, Patrick Morrisey, actually called for this in his State of the State speech.
He did. This is based on his bill, although it was amended somewhat in the Senate process. But he signed an executive order saying that we should have this exemption, both religious and philosophical exemption for children to be vaccinated.
Now, some religious organizations have expressed some concerns about this bill. Did either of the delegates address those?
They did. Delegate Pushkin actually brought it up. There's a concern. The Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston, the Catholic Church, that runs a number of Catholic schools in the state, has said their policy will be keeping the exemption or not allowing an exemption. They want all their children to be fully vaccinated. And the problem is the way the bill is written at the moment, as it passed the Senate, it will actually force the Catholic Church and the Catholic schools to accept any student who is unvaccinated based on these exemptions.
What happens next?
The bill is currently has been introduced into the House Health and Human Resources Committee, and there will be hearings there with the new House system. They're doing a more deliberative approach, and we expect it to keep moving forward.
Well, that sounds like the public may have some input there. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Curtis.
That's our show for today. Catch the Legislature Today Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. And remember, West Virginia Public Broadcasting covers the session daily in our radio news program, West Virginia Morning, and on our news site at wvpublic.org. We also broadcast the daily floor sessions of both the House and the Senate on the West Virginia channel. I'm Curtis Tate. Good evening, and see you here again tomorrow.
Support for the Legislature Today is provided by West Virginia University, offering education, healthcare, and the opportunity to achieve career success since 1867. Information at wvu.edu. Embassy Suites by Hilton Charleston, an all-suite hotel and conference center minutes from Yeager Airport and Capital Market. Reservations and brasserie dining information available at hilton.com.
Solar Holler, supporting Appalachian communities and building on West Virginia's history of powering the nation by bringing solar energy and battery backup to homeowners, nonprofits, and businesses throughout the region. More at solarholler.com.